This video is about resizing everything with the tape measure tool, which is basically a little trick to allow you to put some accuracy into your model after you've already started working. So let's go through a little workflow. Once again, goodbye Bryce. Let's say that I'm just sketching. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure some things out with SketchUp. I'm going to say, you know what, I want like an L-shaped building, something like this. I'm going to come over. Let's zoom out a little and pan over so I can just see what I'm doing. Okay, cool. So I've got this little L-shaped building, and I like that L shape. Let's extrude that up into a box. I want it to L out a little bit more here, actually. And I'd like this to be a little lower. And I would like, I don't know, actually I'd like this to be a little longer. And come to think of it, I probably don't want an L-shaped building. I probably want something more like a U-shaped building. So I'll do something like this and kind of pull that a little ways. I like that. Um, Now what I'm going to do is I'll kind of put a little projection on the side of this. So I'll kind of, I don't know, put that on there, and I'll sort of pull this out just like that. And maybe I actually want there to be another kind of projection on the side of the building over here too. So I'm just going to push this in. Okay. And I'll just take the eraser tool and erase that away. All right. So what I've got is I've got this little mass, and I'm actually pretty happy about how this looks right now. But if you'll notice, what I wasn't doing is actually paying attention to how big anything is. I actually have no idea how big anything is. If I take the tape measure tool right now and measure something, let's just say, I don't know, let's say this were actually supposed to be a doorway. So let's kind of put a little door in here, something like that, okay? And we'll use the push-pull tool and kind of push that in just like this. Okay, so let's say that's a little doorway. I wasn't really paying attention to distances down here in the VCB because I was just kind of building a little conceptual model of what I'd like this thing to look like. What I'll do is I'll use the tape measure tool and just measure something to see how big it really is. So let's measure to see how big that door is that I just drew. Look down in the VCB, or look there. It says it's 3 feet 4.5 inches. Now, that's actually not bad because a door like this might actually be about 3 feet or 3.5 feet wide. But let's say for the sake of argument that that was going to be a double door instead, right? And I actually wanted that thing to be 6 feet wide instead of 3 feet 4.5 inches. There's a trick that you can use in SketchUp while you're using the tape measure tool to automatically rescale your whole model based on one measurement that you have. So in this case, what I did is I just drew this little building. And I know that this doorway wants to be 6 feet wide. In fact, what I'll do is I'll take a little line from the midpoint to there to reinforce the idea that that's a double door, not a single door. Okay, let's take the tape measure and measure from here to here. And if you look down here in the VCB, it's going to say it's 3 feet 4.5 inches wide. What I'm going to do is click. So what I've done is I've clicked, and that measurement's now sort of locked into the VCB. So I measured that. And now what I'm going to do is just type. I'm typing in the measurement that I'd like that to be. And in this case, I'd like it to be 72 inches wide, which is 6 feet. I'm going to say 72 and enter. And this is the key. This is the key to the whole tip. I'm going to get a dialog box here that says, do you want to resize the model? And in this case, what it's saying, do you want to resize the whole model based on the measurement that you just gave that doorway? And I'm going to say yes. And you notice how the whole model grew. In fact, if I take the eraser tool and erase the guide that that tape measure tool made, and then go up and get that tape measure again, and measure the thing that I measured before, lo and behold, it's 6 feet now. So what happened was it reconfigured the entire model based on that measurement that I just made. In fact, let me undo a step. Watch what happens to the scale of the model when I undo. Actually, let's undo again. There we go. See how the whole thing got smaller? In fact, if I go ahead and let's just take the whole thing for the sake of demonstration. I'm going to take that whole thing and get the scale tool, which is basically like a make it smaller, make it bigger tool. Let's just scale this whole thing down. So it's really tiny. And then what I'll do is I'll drop in a person using my components. So I'm going to go up to the window menu and my components. And I'm already in my people library, but let's just drop a little people in for scale. How about this walking guy? We'll stick him here. Okay. Lo and behold, oh my, he's too big to go inside the building. So because the people in your components menu in SketchUp are actually actual size, he's really about, I don't know, between 5.5 and 6 feet tall. My building's too small, so what I want to do is, again, rescale that thing. So remember, I had scaled it to 6 feet, but then I went and undid that. So what I want to do is measure that again. So I'm going to measure this, and it's going to say it's 1 foot 5 and 13/16 inches. But I want it to be 6 feet. So I'm going to click, and then I'm going to type in this case, instead of typing in 72 inches, I'm just going to choose to type in 6 feet instead and hit enter. Now, notice that this dialog box looks a little bit different than it did before, right? Before it said SketchUp, do you want to resize the model? But it didn't have any of this there. That's because I put a person in, and that person is a component. Note that components within the model that were loaded from external files will not be resized. That means if you hit yes right now to resize your model, all the geometry in your model, all the faces and edges, basically this house that I just drew, or this building, are going to be resized except for components loaded from external files, which is a complicated way of saying the person that I dropped in. So watch what happens. I'm going to say yes. It's going to scale that whole thing. Now I'm sort of lost up here. I want to see my whole model, so I'm going to go up here and say the zoom extents command, which basically fills my screen with the model. In this case, it's not working though. Let's try that again. There we go. When I hit zoom extents, it fills my screen with the model so I can see what's going on. And look what happened to the little guy. So he's now the correct scale for the rest of the building. You can see that those doorways are a little high, but basically if I go back and measure now, this thing will indeed be 6 feet across. All right, so that is the resizing everything with the tape measure tool trick, and that includes this video, or concludes this video for Google SketchUp for Dummies.